From his Central Texas Command Center, deep behind enemy lines, the information war continues. It's Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Well, Henry McCall's a Ph.D., was born in Zurich, Switzerland. He's a Canadian, quote, conspiracy theorist. This is Wikipedia. That means he reads Carnegie Endowment and Rockefeller Endowment documents where they said they'd break up the family and you know, best-selling books written by the father of modern advertising and propaganda, Edward Bernays, about how they engineered the feminist movement. Doesn't matter if they all admit it. Wikipedia just calls him a conspiracy theorist. He's the inventor of the board game Scruples. I guess that's a conspiracy theory, too. Maybe that doesn't exist either. Kind of like the Trans-NAFTA highway they're building right down the road from you a few miles doesn't exist. And the author of A Long Way to Go for a Date. He's also written another book called Cruel Hoax, Feminism and the New World Order. And we've got a link to his website up on Infowars.com right now, savethemales.ca. And he's broken a really big story the last few weeks about concentration camp extermination centers of Native Americans up in Canada. And this merges with all that I know about it. When George Bush Sr. ran just one of many programs before he went and ran the eugenics program in China, he publicly on these facilities got 44% of the women sterilized in just 4 years of running the program. I mean, these things are death camps, and that's what the inner cities are. That's what the projects have been, to break up the family. Hey, we'll give you money not to have a man in the house. Then within one generation, they go from 90% legitimacy to 93% illegitimacy and total unraveling of society, all scientifically crafted. But this particular story, because I was setting up McCall last week, and my producer was going, he wants you to have this other guy on. Then I finally looked at the story, and it's like, wow, meshes with all the intel I've got, but even worse, how the extermination ops are going on right now. Your government is completely psychopathic and criminal, waging scientific social engineering warfare on you. And that goes for you, too, cops and bureaucrats that serve the system. We're all in a red level emergency. We're in a false reality, a false engineered reality. We better break out of it right now. And a good way to do it is with Henry McCall, who woke up to feminism. And I wanted him today to talk about, in a nutshell, how it started, why the elites did it, how they wanted both people working so the state could have the kids, and how they've done that, and how in the name of feminism they've turned women into absolute sexual objects, and the men are cowardly, chicken-necked fools. I mean, I'm not just attacking the women. I look at men. They act tough, but they're not tough. And they don't have moral courage. They're lazy. And they're so cowardly they let women boss them around. No woman's happy when you let her boss you around. I mean, that's just how women are built. They want you to be nice to them, take care of them. They can have 180 IQ. They still want somebody to take care of them. And, you know, that's what it comes down to. I mean, they want somebody who basically is going to be their daddy. And, you know, boy, they get mad when you say that, but that's what they want. Let's go to Dr. McCall. Mr. McCall, thank you for coming on with us.
My pleasure, Alex. The message I want to get across to your listeners, because I'm not often on your show and I don't often reach your listeners, is that they're essentially social engineering us to be like homosexuals. They're basically trying to break up heterosexuality, undermine it, and make us like homosexuals. Now, it's really strange, but we have to wake up to the fact that we are the subjects in someone else's laboratory. We are being worked on. We've been worked on for the last 50 years. They use science, they use culture, they use the government, and they use advertising, and they're constantly giving us messages that are undermining our heterosexual nature, attacking gender, that's masculinity and femininity.
And we're not attacking other groups and what they're into. The point is they're attacking us. The state is. And you watch the cartoons, the dramas, the man is an idiot, he's a moron, the women are the boss. And this is the same thing as bringing the black women in the house where they could read, write, and run things, and then they would enslave the black men out in the pen.
That's right. All this business about respecting homosexuals and tolerance, that's just a cover for a vicious attack on the vast majority. And it's being done for political reasons, to basically incapacitate us so that we'll accept, so we'll be dysfunctional, so we can be brainwashed easier, and we can be
so we can be CPS,
manipulated.
so they can take our children and do what they do to the natives, exterminate us, so they can break up our family, so we won't have the will to fight as tribal warriors who are meant to defend the family. They're destroying the nuclei of the family, which is the human species. Men and women, we're all connected. Our children, we are the species together. To say that we're separate is a fraud. Go ahead.
Well, exactly. No, when I tell people that we're being re-engineered to be homosexuals, they just turn off. They think, well, hey, I don't like the opposite sex. What are you talking about? It doesn't matter anymore whether we have sex with the same sex, opposite sex. They don't.
It's
care
the whole
about that.
metrosexual thing. It's men aren't leaders. They're not hard chargers. They're upset about how they look. They ninny.
The fact is that homosexuals, they don't get married. They don't want to get married, despite all the publicity that's being given to that. Homosexuals don't want to get married. They don't want to have children, and all they want to do is have sex. And guess what? Look around at heterosexuals. That's what's happening. If you define homosexuality as a gender identity disorder resulting in arrested development because you cannot bond permanently with a member of the opposite sex, that's us. That's heterosexuals these days. We can't bond permanently, and this is the reason that we're having pornography pushed at us, because they just want us to have sex, but they don't want us to have families.
Go ahead, sir. Continue.
Well, it's all it's so pervasive. It's just ridiculous. Like two of the latest advertisements I've seen. One is a Dairy Queen ad where a little girl and her mother are in a Dairy Queen. She says, "Just order one," and she's picked out some pigeon, some guy a little boy who's flirting with her, and sure enough, the boy buys her a sundae. So Mom only had to buy one for herself.
It's about the manipulation of the dumb males. Yes.
Yeah, and then the little girl says, "It's like shooting fish in a barrel." Come on, what kind of values are those?
They're teaching us an us against them mentality. When really women, they want to take men away from you so they can sterilize you and have their way with you. So when you're dying of your cancer viruses they've implanted, nobody's there to help you. Go ahead.
Right. Then there's a Wrigley spearmint gum commercial where it basically the gum lasts longer. He gives the bouquet to the girl at the door. She runs through the whole sequence of the relationship and breaks up with him at the door. And then the punchline is, "Hey, stick to gum. It lasts longer." You know, two very recent examples, but there's hundreds of them, of this constant attack on heterosexuality.
There's an attack on fidelity. There's an attack on unions and bulwarks, and they said 90 years ago and 80 years ago in the Carnegie Endowment that they had to encourage relationships that break up, promiscuity, and that they had to encourage homosexuality to reduce population numbers. It is a eugenical uprising.
For sure, and to justify all this immigration and so on. If our populations are down, we have to have immigration, and then the population is totally heterogeneous. There's no commonality. It's all part of this grand re-engineering of the human race, which involves destroying race, religion, family, and nation. And,
so they can replace it.
Taggers.
And I mean, I have the Department of Education documents. I know you have them as well. It's all, and they've destroyed us. You look at the public; they are a bunch of dumbed down, don't care about anyone, aren't happy because all of their true tribal instincts have been destroyed.
Exactly, and I think, Alex, we want to look at who's behind this. You mentioned the Carnegie Endowment. It's basically the Rockefellers, who are basically the nominees for the Rothschilds in the United States, and it's basically the world central banking cartel and their allies, which the Masons are their big an important network, and organized jewelry is one of their instruments as well.
And by the way, you're Jewish, and you're saying that.
I'm Jewish, and I'm saying it because I'm making the point that most Jews, in my opinion, don't believe this is happening. And aren't aware it's happening. They don't realize that organized jewelry is being run by the central bankers and is pushing the same agenda.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that you have a lot of folks in technology and in the sciences, and Bernays and a lot of others pushing it. It's just so completely cold-blooded to see this being done to society. So we're a more manageable, mindless, leaderless herd.
The point is that these central bankers, using the Rockefeller Foundation, they've taken over all the institutions in our society. First of all, the interlocking directorate that they own, they own most of major corporations or control them. And then they've taken over the churches. They've taken over the charities.
And they started it all. World Council, National Council of Churches, the National Association of Governors, every major group. You go look, they founded it. The state police in 1933, they got it chartered as federal police. They run it all, folks. They studied how to put cancer viruses and vaccines in the 20s, all public. They're the ones running eugenics on you. It's nightmarish, Henry.
That's right, and I think we have to recognize the fact that this is a satanic cult that has, for centuries, been wanting to basically take over the human race. We're under attack from a satanic cult. And people say, well, what makes them satanic? It's when men decide they're God. That's when they become satanic. And then on top of it, they decide that their evil self-interest and their evil perversions have to be foisted on the human race. And everything that's good about life, and especially love, has to be undermined and destroyed. So we are under attack, under spiritual, political, economic attack.
Yeah, they don't want men to be men. They don't want women to be women. I watch all these feminists, 40, 45, 50, clocks ticking, they made $1 million. None of it means anything to them. They try to go out and find a man, have kids. They usually can't by then. Or they drive off their first 3 or 4 husbands. Some of them wake up and then find out that they don't want to dominate their man. And then they finally are happy, but most of them aren't. They get more and more bitter, more and more man-hating, more and more crazy when they're just chopping off their own nose for their own face. Now, the globalists have also turned men into lazy animals. The programming's worked that way, too. You know, women are shown the male on the Fox TV shows who's an idiot moron, and he gets all the girls. Then the young males go out and act like idiot morons and don't get the girls. Or they get girls that think that's what they're supposed to get, but then it doesn't satisfy them for some reason. All scientifically done. We're all in this together. In fact, Henry McCow, Ph.D., SaveTheMales.ca, you're not saying it's an us against them. You're saying that's a fraud, that's a lie, that's a false paradigm. Break that down for us.
Well, young women have been betrayed big time. They're being betrayed by their teachers, by their government, and by society in general. And, women have about 10 years to make their deal at most, 17 to 27. That's when they're attractive to men. And after that, it's a steep and a slippery slope. Men are attracted to women who are at the height of their fertility. That's nature. And these Luciferians, they want to rewrite nature and pretend that women in their 40s and 50s are attractive to men. Physically, they're not. By that time, men and women will have been married 20 years or more, and they have established a strong bond based on other things, and they've had enough sex that there are other more important things in life, so sexual attraction doesn't matter. So the women who are
it's now a family. It's about taking care of the children that are in college. It's about the family. Exactly.
I mean, they brainwash us to think that sex is necessary and blah blah blah. Andy Warhol says the biggest nothing there is. It's only becomes an issue if you don't get it, and they're making sure we don't. Because we're obsessed with it because we don't.
Yeah, they somehow taught women that it's something they dangle out to men, and no, all men have done is gone and got into porn, which they actually studies show then actually destroys your sexual desire.
Sure, I mean it makes you sick of women and sick of sex. But the bottom line is that women have been betrayed, and men have got to somehow re-educate young women to realize that they have to. Make their deals, establish a family while they're in their 20s, this is my big advice to men is right from the start. You've got to establish that you're the boss, And, of course, before you do that, you've got to be worthy of that responsibility. So you have to...
Well, let me just say this. Women, you don't like the man, being, who you defer to on some issues. Well, you're just going to be fighting all the time, and now the state is your boss. Do you want a man or do you want the state?
Absolutely. Do you want someone who loves you and is willing to devote his life to you, or do you want the state who really doesn't give a shit, or some corporate...
Hey, Doc, we can't talk like that. I'm going to have to let you go if you do that again, okay?
Okay.
All right, just one more. I'm serious. Okay? You can't do that. This is actual radio. This isn't one of those Tinker Toy Play radio networks, okay?
Okay.
I'm not mad at you. Just don't do it again. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyway, or do you want the do you want your corporate boss to be responsible for your life? So, the key is that men have been turned into wimps. Essentially, they've managed to disempower men by empowering women. It's like a seesaw. The way men are empowered is when women defer to men. Women are designed to empower men. Men are designed to use that power to protect women. But when they empower women, men aren't designed to compete and fight with women. And men just essentially they get emasculated. So,
well, they retreat into the trappings of masculinity. Some of them do, or they retreat into femininity. Stay there, Dr. Henry McCow. You have been trained subliminally to hate women. Women have been trained to hate men, that we're competing with each other. It's completely unnatural.
Front porch sitting in an old rocking chair.
Our women are honored. Our women are the centers of the family. And women always instinctively have understood that they are the center of the family, and they've got to support their men. Now, in rare cases, you got drunks or scum, and the society falls apart more and more. But used to, this woman would have brothers and family who wouldn't put up with that, and occasionally, things broke up and happened bad. But we've gone from 90+% legitimacy to now over half illegitimacy. And Henry McCow is our guest. Some of the other news in front of us today. Warning, using mobile phones while pregnant can seriously damage your baby. Another big report there. Iran, CIA-backed terror group, and the U.S. admits they have al-Qaeda inside Iran, blowing up schools, mosques, killing people. And now they just admitted on the news, neocon general calls for more terror attacks inside Iran. I mean, these people are, and then using al-Qaeda while saying that Iran is al-Qaeda. Immigration agency plans new family detention centers. They want to build camps all over the country. That's just the front for building the camps. It's really for citizens, and the actual documents admit that. Get into that later. Also, nations. Bush tells the Arabs are running out of oil, which isn't true. Obama camp spies in-game in Oregon. Says we are all eating too much food. The government should regulate our calories. Everything's going to be micromanaged under the nanny state. It's going to be our mommy. See, mommies can't be mommies, but the state's going to be our mommy. 31,000 scientists rejecting global warming, man-made global warming. Dutch newspaper says Bilderberg to meet in Washington June 5th through the 8th. That is just some of the news we'll be going over. Going back to Henry McCow, Ph.D., continue with the history, how this got going, and some of the documentation you've uncovered.
Okay, well, if your listeners haven't read the Protocols of Elders of Zion, they better read them, because, in my opinion, they're genuine. And they reflect a centuries-old plan to take over the world. And essentially, the power behind this is, as far as I can see, is the central banking cartel, because they've got our credit cards. They've got control over our credit, which they use to print money at will, and they have used that money to basically buy everything and everyone worth buying. So they're behind communism. They're behind the Communist Party of the United States. They had Betty Friedan. Betty Friedan was a communist. She's the founder of second-wave feminism. Everything that second-wave feminism pushed for in the 60s, the Communist Party pushed for in the 40s and 50s. And the leaders of second-wave feminism were essentially these communists, or the daughters of these communists, who are known as red stocking babies.
And it's the same thing, or red diaper babies.
Red diaper babies, that's right.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with the neocons. They're all fourth-wave Trotskyites, the Communist International. And that, now, understand, the bankers created communism. They're not really communists. They communize our wealth like a mosquito injects a anticoagulant to suck out your juices. They communize it, destroy the family, then suck it out. My only issue here is I have no doubt that Zionism's virulent and involved in a lot of the powerful things in banking, and certainly part of it, but I've really studied the core documents. There's like a merger with that and the Anglo-American British elite, and then the whole Germanic system is also to regulate and control and carry out eugenics. I mean, can you explain to me why the Zionists are carrying out a Nazi-style eugenics policy against blacks, Asians, and Latin Americans?
Well, it's because these central bankers seem to subscribe to elements in religion, or possibly Jewish religion, Kabbalah, and things that may even predate Jewish religion, mystery religions, that are satanic in nature. And they've amalgamated with all the other elites and converted them to this Satanism.
Well, I mean, that's what I want to be clear about here, is I go where the truth is, okay? And, you know, we see the Vatican pushing the New World Order. We see Protestant leaders pushing the New World Order. And obviously we see people that support, you know, Zionism pushing it and at the highest levels. My whole deal is that there's other people who say, no, it's got to be the Catholics and only the Catholics. There's people that say, no, it's got to be the Zionists, only the Zionists. Or, no, it's got to be the British and only the British. And I'm saying, you know, that it turns into a contentious issue where we all then just, and we're not doing this, but others, fight over, well, no, it's only this group in control. And I've done legitimate, real study, and I found that at the top of the pyramid, it's like a bunch of pyramids going together into a super pyramid. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and God bless you, Alex, because I totally agree with you. I mean, they have basically co-opted all the elites, and so it's like arguing whether it's the New York mob or the Chicago mob or the L.A. mob. It's all the mob. They all belong to the same satanic cult, and they in a sense, they confuse us by showing us different faces. But it's the same phenomenon.
Okay, so, but I mean, getting back more into the history of feminism, talk some about your book about the cruel hoax.
Well, the cruel hoax essentially contains all my research from the first 6 years of my website, including the article Betty Friedan, Mommy Was a Commie, and just showing that, you know, she was a communist. But they essentially use dupes. They use people who are misguided and actually believe what they're saying. But if what they're saying pushes their agenda, the Illuminati agenda, the banker agenda, then they finance them and they really hype them up. So Betty Friedan was a dupe, and a dupe is far more effective than a conscious agent
because they mean well.
Yeah, they mean well, and that's what those good intentions communicate. Similarly, I think possibly Adolf Hitler was a dupe, but let's not go there right now. Okay, another thing they control are...
Well, there's no maybe Hitler was a dupe. Lord Milner, the head British lord, talked about in the teens, how decades later they were going to engineer a German strongman and then set him up and then let him tear the hell out of Europe and then come in and take over.
Exactly. They put Hitler into power, and they kept him in power. Now, another thing, the way they control society, probably one of the most effective ways, is their control of intelligence agencies. It all starts with MI6. That's the mother of all Masonic.
And they admittedly run all the high-class brothels where they then just set people up, and it comes out that they run the brothels, they ship the drugs, and they just say that's how it is.
And, look what happened to Elliot Spitzer. He got out of line, and, they had the info on him, and they got rid of him. And so the reason I mentioned the intelligence agencies, the Masons, I see Freemasonry as just sort of a branch of the Kabbalah. It's basically Judaism for Gentiles, but the Freemasons don't realize this. I don't think the Jews even realize what they're involved in, what has happened to Judaism. I don't think it's any longer a monotheistic religion.
Well, there's no secret that...
I'm not even sure if it's a religion anymore.
Yeah, but there's no secret that Kabbalah and Kabbalah all goes back to Egypt and then Babylon, and so all your major occultic religions go back. I think it's an overstatement to say that Jewish mysticism runs the gamut and is the dominant force, because it itself is just a brand of Babylonian mystery religion / Egyptian.
Okay, like you said, I'm not going to play, like you, I don't want to play the game of where the responsibility lies. It's certainly spread widely. That's always been my point, and I'm glad to hear that it's your point, too. Anyway, the reason I mentioned the intelligence agencies is CIA was started up by the, MI6 through OSS, and essentially the central bankers run the CIA. Sure, there's a lot of little cells of the CIA that aren't aware of this.
Oh no, I mean, we're skull and bones. People and commanded the entire CIA and still does, and that's all out of one university, yeah. And
Gloria Steinem, I mentioned Betty Friedan. Gloria Steinem was a CIA agent.
Yeah, she wrote that in one of her books.
Yeah, she worked for the CIA, and whether she was on, officially working for them or not, she was essentially doing their will when she, posed as a Playboy bunny. And essentially they run the magazines, CIA. They run Esquire, that ran Gloria Steinem's story that made her famous. They ran New York Magazine, which later hired Gloria Steinem. Anyway, she became, with Betty Friedan, the other great leader of second-wave feminism. And again, like Friedan, who worked for the Communist Party, which was central banker-controlled, Steinem worked for the CIA, which is central banker-controlled. The whole feminist movement was led by the central banker agents or central banker dupes. It was financed and promoted by them. And what I say often in my articles in my book is that if you Google Rockefeller Foundation and women's studies, you'll get something like 90,000.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. I mean, they funded thousands of different organizations and groups, thousands of eugenics groups, hundreds of major foundations. I mean, it is just mind-blowing.
Exactly. We're in a laboratory. We're the subject. We can't trust anything we're taught in school, anything we hear on the radio, anything we read in a book or in a magazine. We can't trust anybody. But I will say to your listeners, I like what I hear Alex Jones saying. I think we can trust Alex Jones. I think we can trust Jeff Rentz, too. And there's a few other people like Michael Rivero. Thank God we have a few courageous men standing up who I think do represent the truth.
Well, you have to judge somebody by their long-term track record and the fruits that they bear. And you really shouldn't even trust us, folks. You should go out and make your own decisions, and you're good, so you need to get involved. And, of course, an agent will never tell you that. An agent will never tell you to take action, get involved, do good things, fight the New World Order, fight for sovereignty. If you notice, I am diametrically opposed to every New World Order program, and I work on shattering the left-right paradigm. The establishment always tries to put you back into a left-right debate.
You used to have on your website, on, I think, Prison Planet, a quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, where he says, when they started rounding us up, if they realized that they could be shot, they might have put a whole different color on it. Remember that quote?
Yeah, he said, how we burned in the camps, wishing that when they came to pick us up one and one at night, we would have met them in the stairwells, in the foyers, in the apartments with daggers and pokers and hatchets, basically as a paraphrase. And then they would have stopped them, which is what the drug cartels know, CIA run. They're telling Mexican police, join us or die, Associated Press. So this is all just survival of the fittest. But go ahead, Henry.
Well, I think you're just making the point that, things have gotten to the point where in the United States, it is legal. You still have a constitutional right to defend yourselves. And, I think Americans need to be prepared to defend themselves. But if they don't have weapons, they ought to. If they don't know how to use them, they ought to know how to use them.
Henry, where do you see all this going?
Well, there is a sense of urgency, but I tend not to panic. I tend to detect a long-term agenda on their part. Things are, if you look in terms of 5-10 years, things are moving rapidly in their favor culturally. I think their agenda is more to enslave us than to absolutely kill us. And they're doing a good job of enslaving us. You can see the changes if you look at it decade at a time. So I sort of see more of the same going. Now, whether they'll actually pull off a third world war on us, that seems to be in the program, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for a number of reasons. They own all the property anyway. Why would they want to destroy it? Plus, they kill all the people, then that just destroys supply and demand. All their gold, if no one wants it, is not going to be worth anything. And on top of it, if you look at us slaves, I mean, we're debt slaves. I mean, they kill us, they'll never collect on the debt. So I tend to see us muddling on. I see things getting worse, but I don't see a catastrophe. I don't see an imminent catastrophe. That's just my sense of things.
There's a New York Times story today where they kind of celebrate that it's up by 40+%, the number of tattletale phone calls, and the people call up begging, saying, my grandson smokes marijuana, come arrest him, I need $500 to train a grandmother to turn her grandson in, or a woman to turn her husband in for money. The grubbing, the falling over themselves for this green stuff that the globalists just print out of nothing.
You've essentially got the devil operating the money system and teaching us to value money and nothing else. I mean, we live in a world that is controlled by the devil, not just metaphorically, but the devil literally has his hands on the lever. We are talking about devil worshippers who control society. And our politicians, our Obamas and our McCains, these are just people who have satisfied the devil, that he will do the devil worshippers.
Yeah, they don't just, they're not just willing to do evil. They're not just psychopaths. They're sadistic psychopaths. Now, I've documented for myself that they are devil worshippers / Luciferians, but how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, I just tend to look at the fact that they're trying to come between a mother and a baby. They're trying to be a mother and her children. They're trying to come between men and women, and men who have nothing but protective and loving feelings for women. I mean, that's one indication. Another, the line in the Protocols of Elders of Zion that convinced me that the thing was authentic was where the speaker says, already in our cities and towns, there is a cold and forlorn feeling among the public. That's just not the kind of thing that a hoaxer would think of to write. And the idea that he would take pleasure in the fact that the public is alienated and isolated, and we're talking about the late 19th century, and take chortle at the fact that there is a cold and forlorn feeling in society, indicates that these people hate humanity. They hate humanity. And just as God loves humanity, and God is love, and God takes pride in humanity and wants us to know him, the devil hates humanity and wants to enslave us, if not destroy us. So it's just little anecdotal things that have convinced me. I don't spend a lot of time reading, Freemasonry and shit like that, because I can recognize a cesspool without getting into it by the smell.
Well, Doc, the website savethemales.ca, and again, your book walks through a lot of this. I appreciate you coming on the broadcast with us, and I know you've woken a lot of people up to what's happening with the New World Order. We can debate all day what group captains it, but there's no doubt the direction they're going in is extremely, extremely